latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for updates.
This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh, Revi, and today we're discussing the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's visit to the Philippines, his first as an official, as a minister, and how that comes on the heels of the Quad Foreign Ministerial meeting in Melbourne, as well as the BrahMos deal that was signed with the Philippines. Our expert tonight is Dr. Pooja Bhatt. She's an Asian security expert with a focus on maritime security and is the author of the 9-Line, Deciphering the South China Sea Conundrum. Dr. Bhatt, thank you so much for your time. You're muted, I think.
I'm sorry. Good evening. Thank you for having me, Amitabh, for the show, and I'm really glad to be here with you all.
The pleasure is all ours. Just wanted to get your reading on the significance of the visit coming close on the heels, as we said, of the Quad Ministerial and that BrahMos deal.
Yeah, so taking from how we actually got the BrahMos deal after 2 years of negotiating, we were in talks since 2017-18, and then finally we have come up with the deal. So that is one huge diplomatic win for us, of course. At the military level, of course, we are again doing this deal. That is again a win. But given the backdrop that now Indo-Pacific as a region is now developing, and now we just had the Quad Ministerial meeting, foreign ministers meeting in Australia, where Jaishankar was present, and coming to Philippines after that. That and a simultaneous release of the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy. So many things happening at the same time. I think BrahMos deal and External Affairs Minister to the Philippines is a very, very significant thing for the moment.
If you want to flesh out a little bit of your thoughts on the BrahMos deal in the milieu that it came in January 28th, as you said, like it's been 3 or 4 years or more than that that it took for the actual signing to take place, in lieu of countries strengthening their military and security infrastructure. It's Philippines, of course, but we've seen Indonesia, Malaysia looking for military deals as well. And putting it in context of India's very ambitious defense export target of 5 billion by 2025.
Right. Great question. So the thing is, it is also a time when the countries are facing, Chinese pressure in the South China Sea. Though we were talking about these deals for a long amount of time, there are a few things that happened in tandem which actually facilitated this entire deal, if you understand. So first, India, getting the MTCR approval so that India can, sell its missile-related technology to other countries is one big win for India that allowed India to sell this. Another is Philippines now taking a position of buying the weapons. For all these years, there could be a number of reasons why Philippines was not going through with it. First was, of course, the maybe Chinese pressure, which was not allowing Duterte initially maybe to take it on board, but now they are doing it. Second is, of course, why the deal got delayed was the COVID, and as we understand, Philippines itself is not that much of an economically developed country to seek for the entire deal. So I think these were some issues which delayed. But we also saw how Chinese pressure on Philippines has built up over the years. It's not just Chinese claims that have become more, aggressive in Mischief, Reef, Scarborough, Shoal, where that Philippines consider their own area, that it is own maritime assets. But also the Filipino fishermen that have been, and in the past few years, if one data says around more than 250 incidents have happened where Chinese militia, Chinese PLA Navy has been harassing these Filipino fishermen. So these are the incidents that happened, and I think that took up major toll on how Duterte government has reacted to it. And there's a lot of internal pressure on Duterte government. They are coming into elections, and now Duterte has to keep up with his word, right? So I think these are the issues that have actually led of Duterte to take a position and buy BrahMos. See, BrahMos is basically the version they are buying is a supersonic shore-based anti-ship missile. So that means they will be using it for their coastal defense. It's a defensive thing that they'll be using it and placing on their coastal areas. We have to understand that the range of BrahMos missile is around 290 as per the paper records we see, and the easy of any country's special the economic zone, exclusive economic zone, is approximately 200 nautical mile or 370 kilometers roughly. So if even if they place it on their coast and they use it, it will be purely defensive if they see any hostile ship attacking them or coming in their region. So I think to deter that kind of thing, they're using these batteries of coastal defense missiles to counter that kind of aggression. So I think that is the idea they want to use. This is just a first step towards coastal defense, and there has to be a lot more that Philippines need to do for their defense.
Sure. You mentioned Scarborough and Mischief Reef. Last year, we saw also in the movement around Whitsun Reef as well. I think it's called something else in the Philippines, Javier Reef. Do you think issues like Whitsun would have also allowed it? Because the strategic hesitancy was not just from India's part, it was from the Philippines or other ASEAN countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, who are apparently also in line. You think issues like that, like the Whitsun Reef issue with China, would have, given the green signal domestically for the Philippines as well?
Absolutely. So every time incident like this happens, and China goes more aggressive towards maritime assets that other countries claim their own and they consider their own, I think they are just pushing other countries to the edge. China is doing that to other countries, and they are thinking of their own security. Philippines per se is not a country which thinks for its regional security or external security too much, because it has so many of its internal security issues as it is, and its government system is not prone to that external security thinking kind of. But the past few years, since 2016, when Philippines won the case against against China in the PCA verdict, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, regarding the South China Sea. Since then, there is kind of dual level of engagement with China that has been happening vis-a-vis Philippines. So on one level, Duterte government is trying to constantly negotiate with the China regarding maybe just to get a assurance that they are not their security is not hurt too much. But at the same time, they are realizing that they need to strengthen their security, because despite all the talks going on with China, their security is still being hampered, and this is becoming a domestic politics issue for them. It's just not a external security, foreign security issue. It's for them, it's now becoming a domestic issue. Fishermen are being affected, and fishermen is a very strong community in Philippines. So I think every time a reef incident happens, whether Whitsun or Scarborough or a Mischief Reef, I think there's too much of domestic pressure that is coming on the government.
You've answered a question that one of our viewers asked, Omkar, does the BrahMos cover all the islands contested between the Philippines and China? If they place it on the farthest part of their territory, can it tilt the balance? And Omkar thanks you for that. In fact, he says, I got my answer, thank you. And Ramchandar Gurjar says, beautifully explained by Dr. Pooja. Just putting in another question from a viewer for you, Dr. Bhatt. Could ASEAN deliberate upon a common foreign policy stance towards Chinese aggression in the South China Sea? Is there any chance of that happening? This is from Kurt Cobain.
So basically, that is happening since 2002, when they wanted to have a
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct, declaration on the code of conduct, and that has been they have been doing since 2002. However, the problem is ASEAN is not a unified entity. They are made up of 10 countries. Each of them has a separate relation with China. And only 5 of those 10 countries have these maritime issues with China. So whenever the issue of South China Sea comes up, whether it's the ASEAN meetings with China or it's the annual meetings that ASEAN has, there is a divided position within ASEAN itself, and that is what is being leveraged by China. That divided position has been leveraged by China to not come up with a common position for all. Vietnam, if you see, Philippines, if you see, each time they are on the chair of ASEAN, of the ASEAN, there are more strong statements that come out that year. However, when the other countries like Brunei is there,
Laos,
or Laos, Cambodia are
Cambodia.
there, yeah, that issue gets very watered down every time. So there is no easy answer and for them to come up together on the South China Sea. They remain divided on these issues.
Being divided, an interesting question from Matara. Is it time for one of the ASEAN countries to develop nuclear deterrence against China? Is that even being thought about in any of the ASEAN countries, Dr. Bhatt?
The ASEAN has this treaty, so they have signed this treaty that they will remain a nuclear weapon-free zone. So, and this is accepted within the ASEAN own charter. So, having that said, I don't think they will have a nuclear option open for them at all. At least at the ASEAN level, I don't see that happening. They might.
Another question. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Go
sorry.
ahead.
So I was just saying that they might, bolster themselves in other ways, like BrahMos bought by, Philippines and Vietnam seeking the same, Indonesia seeking the same. I think these countries are seeking it to bolster their security, but not in a nuclear way, I guess.
Right. Another question from Senbaga for you. Do you think India should focus more on defense system sales to Vietnam, Philippines, and Indonesia to have more presence in their region to keep a watch on China?
I think India is making that effort. There are countries that require basic defense systems for their own protection, and India is, I think, eyeing what we hear from from the home ministers in the previous talks, and we are basically, and Rajnath Singh had also mentioned a lot of time that India is aiming for defense sales. So I think that is the entire area that India is looking at as a defense seller in the coming years, and so regional countries would seek a lot of weapons from India, I guess, in that regard.
And in your view, Dr. Bhatt, how is China reacting to all these developments in terms of BrahMos, of course, the Quad? We've seen how it was described by Wang Yi, I think, as foam that will dissipate. All these developments, the Indo-Pacific strategy that the U.S. paper that has come out, how do you see China reacting to all this?
See, China never made a very overt statement with BrahMos sale for I don't know, whatever reasons. But if you read some of the internal readings coming out from whatever security analysts there and some people there, I think they don't see BrahMos as a major game changer, because they just see BrahMos at having limited range and all that. So they are seeking it from that point of view, that BrahMos will not make much difference. However, the other side of it, what they're not considering is that BrahMos is one of the defensive system that one of the countries is developing, and if Philippines is leading that race, maybe other countries of the region, they would want to buy defensive, and the sales of defensive systems like these would increase in the time. So I think China would be closely watching these kind of developments at the moment, and they might come up with the statement. However, when it comes to Quad and Indo-Pacific strategy, China has this constant statement which comes out from all the sources, all the foreign security sources that they write, is that US is trying to build up a Cold War mentality, and they're trying to and then they're trying to divide the world, and they're making the region more vulnerable, more insecure. So they are trying to see Quad as a threat to the region, and that how the US is trying to interfere in Asian way of thinking of security and its norms and its values. So I think all the statements when China make against Quad and Indo-Pacific come from that point of view.
You were talking about India's defense exports. You mentioned Rajnath Singh. Indian Mastiff has another question. What about selling, say, the Akash and missile locating radars? I think there's something about coastal radars that is going on in the region.
Yeah, I think even Philippines was also interested in coastal. India offered, and I think that the talks are going on. That would be my level of knowledge here. I don't know which are countries India is considering to sell it, but I think coastal radar is one of the areas which most of these coastal countries would be interested, because they would want to strengthen their systems, and only missiles will not help. You need to have overarching infrastructure for the coastal defense system, and I think India has that kind of system to provide to these countries. So
Another security-related question from Lakshmiksha, who says, are there any naval logistics and maritime intelligence partnership deals between India and the Philippines?
and not that I'm aware of. We
Even
do
I
not
don't think
have.
so. I mean,
Yeah,
we've had Coast Guard and naval exercises, I think.
we
But
do joint exercises. We have port visits and joint training and all that, but I don't think we have any kind of that kind of arrangement.
And Varun Pratap says new alliances like the Quad, you were talking about the Quad and AUKUS gaining traction in the Indo-Pacific. How are these developments viewed by the countries in ASEAN and broader East Asia?
See, in terms of Quad, there is still hesitance from the ASEAN countries, because they still see it as a major countries alliance, partnership basically. So I'm not sure that how many of ASEAN countries would want to be a part of Quad, and unless Quad talks about expanding itself to Quad Plus, which was one of the discussion that was coming in between, that how we want to expand it to the other regional partners, like-minded countries. I think if we start that kind of conversation, ASEAN countries would be interested. However, right now, Quad was majorly seen as something anti-China, and I don't think ASEAN would want to be part of anything which becomes very on the face anti-China at the moment. On the other hand, I think there is a larger approval for AUKUS, because they see AUKUS as security umbrella in the region, because if it comes through in next, which is not coming through in next 20 years, submarine sale and all that, but if it comes through, it might be a complementary security arrangement in the region against China, where so I think there is more positive response for AUKUS from ASEAN countries, but not that much for Quad, at least at this moment.
You're talking about BrahMos for the Philippines and possibly maybe for Indonesia and Vietnam. If that goes through, Omkar says, what's your view on Indonesia's decision to purchase Rafales and F-15s, ditching the Russian deal for the Sukhoi 35s? I mean, the signal here is, of course, that all these individual ASEAN countries are strengthening their security infrastructure.
Absolutely.
And the Russians had some, I think, exercises with ASEAN as well. So that's another interesting dynamic.
Very interesting to say that. Yes. So there are two things happening. So one is that each of these ASEAN countries are diversifying themselves militarily. So they are not just relying upon their traditional, security partners. Now they are looking for new areas where they can have more partnership with other countries who are ready to supply. And France and other countries are being very active in those kind of relationship with ASEAN countries. Also, presence of Russia in the region is actually something very considerate point again, because Russia is seeking its larger presence in the Indian Ocean region, and now it's engaging with more and more Asian countries, ASEAN per se itself. And given the China factor, now how we see that how Russia and China are coming together, I think China cannot say beyond a point on this kind of relationship. This is again a very interesting dynamics which is happening in Indian Ocean, where Russia is interested, and with countries which are not very supportive of China, and then China just seeing all the developments and still not saying anything much about it. So these are very interesting developments at the moment, which is happening in the Indo-Pacific, I see.
Molly Tiwari says, good evening, ma'am. Is it the right time for India to increase their naval presence in the South China Sea and show its interest in the region? One, do we have the capability and do we have the necessity to do that?
Yeah, that is the answer actually. So India is very much interested in South China Sea. Its claims are neither new nor unique. We have we stand for free and open Indo-Pacific, and free for NOPs and overflight operations. So in that regard, India has its very mind very set on how it wants to go in the South China Sea. However, we also know about our limitations, like how many ships we have, how much we can deploy there. I think these are the question about your ambition and whether it is backed by your capabilities or not.
Right. And on India's Act East policy, has it been significant, Kurt Cobain again asks, in countering Chinese influence or expanding Indian influence in Southeast Asia? If not, what more should India look to do?
I think it is a very, very early to comment on Act East policy because we just we shifted from, Look East to Act East just in 2014. And it would be very soon to judge this policy in, which in 5 years. One good thing is that we have shifted just from saying Look East to actually, building up a relationship. Uh, ASEAN leaders coming to our national events, and then we having more and more diplomatic engagement, political high level meetings, interchanges of that sort. So I think that is a very good move up towards Southeast Asia that we are looking at this policy. Also, we need to consider that entire Southeast and most of the countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia are still developing. So they're still finding their synergies in how to, come up together to find meaningful, relationship with each other. They have their limitation in terms of economics. They have their limitation in terms of, their military levels. So all these engagements are step towards that, increasing and intensifying those military and economic engagements.
Another interesting point here from Jaideep Gadavi, who says, what about the defense relationship that China and the Philippines had that was flourishing during the initial years of the Duterte administration?
So yeah, it was all smoke and no fire.
Oh.
so so yes, when Duterte came into power, and which was just after the 2016 PCO verdict, within that same month he came into power, and then he was called upon by President Xi, and they had a very good talk and how they wanted. So, but what happened in reality, if you see the paper, real records, there has been very little that has been transferred in terms of their arms sales or those kind of military engagements. Very, very little has happened. So that that initial fervent of Philippines China relation is now dying down, and there is so much of domestic pressure on Duterte right now to act against China that he cannot go beyond a point for furthering that kind of relation until unless China ensures their security to them. So that is the thing that is driving it right now.
And how do you see the US and the Philippines? I mean, they're treaty allies. There were a lot of hiccups about the visiting force agreement, but that seems to have been resolved for now, at least.
Yes. So again, when Duterte came into power, and he had very colorful language to be, used against Prime Minister President Obama, and then seeing from that angle, there was this thing that maybe U.S. Philippine relationship is withering off. But China being China, and then Duterte being Duterte, I think the engagement went so that Duterte realized that it cannot just rely on China for this security arrangement, and it requires a US. And after these incidents of what happened in the Whitsun Reef and Scarborough Shoal and all this, he was more and more convinced, I guess, that he would require this VFA, the Visiting Forces Agreement, to be in place, and he would require US military to be present there on the land, so that for the security reasons. At the same time, he also expanded his or he's expanding his military relationship with other countries. So I think US is not leaving with Philippines anytime soon, and China is ensuring that for them.
Another interesting development, it may just be domestic related, but there has been reporting suggesting that it's Philippines taking a leaf out of India's book is on RCEP, and the Senate has not really ratified that. It's put it off till the next session, which is, I think, in May 23rd. That's post-elections. Do you see any China connection there, or is it just domestic politics?
I'm personally thinking, yes, there has to be a huge China connection there, because internally, if you study Philippine politics. A lot of leaders, top-rung leaders, are against Duterte, signing RCEP at the moment, because it is not favoring their neither their economic status nor their the entire political arrangement that they have with China. So I think China is a very much the factor for why Philippines is holding on RCEP at the moment. Whether it is a leaf from India's chapter, not very sure, but I think it's a very encouraging sign for them to see if India can stay out of RCEP and wait and watch. Maybe Philippines also can do that. So they're not taking a very hurried step towards RCEP, because it actually integrates their entire economy with China, and I think Chinese terms are not very favorable, and more countries are realizing that.
And one question from Yes, That's Right, who says, good evening, ma'am. Why can't India actively engage with Vietnam militarily, as China is using Pakistan to satisfy its needs and pressurize India?
Okay. The thing is, it doesn't work that simply. India is doing its exercises and port visits with Vietnam, and there have been a tremendous exchanges between the two countries in terms of their maritime diplomacy and training and exercises that the two countries have been doing. India has been offering them submarines, training them for them. They are seeking more systems that India is willing to provide. So this is how it works. But just seeing it from India-Pakistan angle would be too short a vision, because I think India, these two are different things. We are seeking one maritime connection, and then we are talking about from the point of view of our territorial thing. I think India is trying to do is build up more and more, like-minded, its relationship with the like-minded countries, and more support you have from the international community, I think better it is for you in the security kind of. So seeing it only from India-Pakistan view would be a very short term vision view, I think it would be.
Another one from Prithviraj, who says, what's on the line for the ministerial visit, Jaishankar's visit, and what do you think should be the outcome of the meetings? You've seen a couple of tweets where ministers talking about India and Philippines entering a new phase of relationship that's dependent on, development and security angle of that. Do you see India and Philippines becoming strategic partners at some point in time? And does that really make a difference?
I think so. That should be on the cards for India to be a strategic partner. But before that, there is so much that Philippines is seeking from India right now. If you talk to Philippine people from there, they seek India as a partner. They want more and more to do with India. However, we are the ones basically right now who are not able to maybe give them that kind of option. More because Philippines has nothing much to offer. If you see the trade difference, Philippines, we trade with Philippines, like we sell them something about 1.5 billion each year, and the imports are only 500 millions or so something. So there is a huge trade difference that India needs to first look at. I think we should not straight away jump to the security angle. That is something which can be gradually built up. But I think we should see for their immediate needs right now. And what they immediately need is economic development for their country. So I think that is the area where India should fit in, and India should provide options for it. One of the areas that they are seeking from is tourism. They want more and more Indian tourists to visit Philippines. It's a nice, beautiful place. Incidentally, China has a huge tourist influx in the Philippines, which they enjoy economically, but they do not like them because Chinese bring a different kind of system to the Philippines, which Filipinos per se do not like. I think these are the areas that India need to first figure out, that what exactly Philippines want in economic range, and actually build up on those. We have promised them on IT sector, we have pharmaceuticals, we are big medical hub for Filipinos to come and get themselves treated. So I think these are the areas where India needs to build up. Strategic partnership will come eventually, but I think we need to figure out where we fit together seamlessly. So yeah, that way I think a strategic partnership, then something would be the next step.
Just going to take a couple of comments. Dejan Hans Ilaya, who says, I'm Filipino. We do not like China bullying our fishermen. Dr. Pooja Bhatt, absolutely appreciate your time and your expertise, and it's reflected by our viewer questions. And if I can just find one that thanks you as well, Anurag Shukla, who says, Dr. Bhatt, good to see you, and thanks for your diverse perspective, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm glad.
So it was an absolute pleasure having you, and we'll keep getting you for more on your expertise as well. Thanks, Dr. Bhatt.
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And just a reminder to our viewers, do follow our social media handles for the latest news and analysis from an Indian perspective. If you're not following or subscribing to our YouTube channel, you can do that. Like this video if you have stayed this long, like many of you have, and do share the link as well. And many of our supporters have been saying that they would like a UPI payment ID to try and contribute and support us. It's there in the YouTube link, but I'm putting it up on the screen as well. This is StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.